Hey, welcome back to my little corner of the internet. I like to call my show. It's the Matt Metler Secret Show. Only people that are in the know about the secret show. That would be you. So thanks for being here. That's cool, man. Appreciate that. It's a lovely Tuesday morning here in Superior, Colorado as I film this. All kinds of things have taken place since I spoke to you guys last. Last weekend, we went down to Salida. We were in Castle Rock on Friday, so it kind of made sense to head to the south, see if we could find some cooler temperatures. Hit some pretty intense rain and some hail on Friday night. Thankfully, that hail was not big enough to damage the car, but it was intense. And driving through it is extremely unnerving, as anybody who's driven through some hail knows. So that happened, right? Then we got to see the Flag Day parade in Salida, quite by accident, actually. We sort of went over there just to see what was going on, and right as we pulled up, they were, starting to blockade off the street and everything so that they could have the parade.
Very nice.
We got to see it. Small town parades are the best because everybody gets to participate, I guess. They even had like the library bookmobile in the parade. Like, it doesn't take much to qualify as parade material in a small town, but that's okay. Let's celebrate all of it, right? It was great. There was these little gymnasts. Apparently there's a circus there, but there's only 3 members of the circus right now. They came by and they were doing like circus-y sort of things down the street. That was fun. There was some kids who were doing bicycle stunt tricks. There was this one kid who was on one of those, I don't even know what you call it. It doesn't really have a seat on it, but it's like a stunt cross-country bike sort of thing that you do like really advanced stunt riding on. So that was pretty cool, right? He was doing popping wheelies all up and down the street. There was a really super cool old fire truck that was part of the procession. As a matter of fact, that kind of came at the beginning. It was fun. Oh, got to see the Shriners drive their cars around, man. I love that. I haven't seen that in a minute, so it was kind of fun to watch the Shriners drive their cars around. Yeah, had a great time, and it's nice to get out of the city. When you get into a smaller town vibration, it's just more friendly, less rude, less rushed, So we had a lot of fun at that. That was great. Watching the kids get all excited as the candy gets thrown out, and the kids get to collect all the candy and everything. I remember those days when you were a kid and how exciting all that was. So, yeah, that was neat. We had a great time. In my next note, our lakes and reservoirs here in Colorado are looking vastly improved. Most of the lakes and reservoirs look like they have recovered. Chatfield looks like it's full now. Boyd Lake looks like it's pretty full now. Yeah, we've been getting considerable amounts of rain, and all the grass and everything is looking really green. As a matter of fact, Colorado is looking very green right now. There was a prediction of this year was supposed to be a drought year and very dry, according to longer cycles. I think there's like a 90-year cycle or something like that of drought. And 2025 was predicted to be like a bad year for that. But so far, that has not materialized in any way. Right now, it looks really good. And the rivers up in the mountains are flowing pretty strong, especially headed towards Salida, all that river flowing down that way, flowing really strong, right? The runoff. We saw a lot of people rafting, and it looked like there was some pretty good rapids for them to ride, no doubt. Additionally, crops are in the fields. There's some foot-tall corn going out there. The winter wheat looks like it's finishing up, and it looks like it's ready to be harvested. Farmers are doing their normal thing. Everything looks normal, near as I can tell, right? Not seeing any sort of any indicators of anything unusual as far as farm activity. So I think all of that stuff is good, right? Then in my next note, we had the pleasure of going up and visiting an abandoned mining town called St. Elmo. It was way out in the middle of the woods, up in the mountains, and I could see why it was eventually abandoned. They were doing some pretty serious silver mining there for a long time, sluice mining with hoses and water and all of that stuff. And they moved a lot of material. And I think eventually they just decided they were done. And they all packed up and they left and it became abandoned. And now some folks live there during the summer part of the year. And then during the winter part, it's closed because you can't really get up there unless you're on a snow machine or something like that. So we got to visit St. Elmo. There's a few buildings up there still left. Pretty interesting, right? Quite the story of St. Elmo. At one point, there was 2,000 people there, which is really hard to believe, in the area, mining. So, yeah, once upon a time, pretty happening little town, now abandoned. So, it gets like 75,000 visitors a year or something like that. Some pretty large number of visitors. A lot of people drive up there. Yeah, fairly busy spot. Cool stuff. Then there was an earthquake under St. Vrain. The USGS reported that more than 500 people felt a 2.9 magnitude earthquake near Dacono. St. Vrain is like a state park here, and they said that the epicenter of the earthquake was like 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers below St. Vrain, which is not a very strong earthquake. That's just a little gentle rumbling. But part of me thinks that that's prime oil and gas territory and that they've pumped tons of oil and gas and water out of that area. And subsidence is a thing. When you suck all the oil and gas and water out of the ground has to subside into the region where all of that stuff used to be. And earthquakes shouldn't be unusual, but they are somewhat unusual here in Colorado, so that happened. One thing that we did notice on the road to Salida is that there is quite a bit of fresh rock on the edge of the road. And whenever I drive through there, I always keep my eye peeled on all the crevices and cleavage that's taking place. I watch those gaps to see if they're getting bigger. Like from Canyon City to Salida, there's a lot of precarious rocks along that drive. So there's that happening. Then in my next story, this whole Iran thing is pretty wild because after 50 years of talking shit and saber rattling my entire life, the entire time I've been alive, Iran has been sort of asserting itself against the West and talking mad smack about how they're going to deliver the pain to us if we ever try anything with them. But the crazy shit is they couldn't last one weekend of bombardment from Israel before they're collapsing. And all their leadership is fleeing and all their military leadership is dead. And they didn't last a weekend. Which in my mind makes an interesting note about how a lot of the threat that we perceive to be from these countries, it just isn't really there the way that they try to portray it. Warfare has changed dramatically. The way that drone warfare has advanced just during the Ukraine thing from 2014 until now is incredible. The amount of technology advancement that has taken place in drone warfare in those 10 years now is amazing. And it's completely changed the battle space for countries. And Iran has all kind of attack drones itself in tunnels underneath the ground, but unless you're using that stuff, it may not mean anything at all. So Iran basically is in a situation where it's about to fall and it needs to negotiate, and it only took one weekend. I think these Middle Eastern countries can't even wrap their brain around the way we fight war in the West. The way we use intelligence, the way we use satellites, the way we use communication, the way we use coordinated action. They're still stuck in, I'm going to say, a 1960s style of desert warfare, and they're not really at the point where we're at technologically. And these countries in the Middle East that talk big smack should watch their britches, right? Because you can annihilate somebody's command and control structure and their infrastructure and put them back 15, 20, 30, 40 years in a weekend. So that happened. They're talking about, could be a catalyst for World War III. No, probably not. Looks like Iran's going to fold. Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out in the real world. A side note to all of that is we are now living in a world full of paper tigers. Countries that seem threatening, that seem big and bold, that seem like they have capabilities, but in the background, they're disorganized, they're undisciplined, they don't actually have the capabilities that they try to claim, and that we are sort of living in this world where the powers that be are capitalizing on our fear of war, on our fear of discomfort, to extend this pretend game of paper tigers staring at each other in the forest as long as possible. But the reality is, China can't invade America. They would see what America actually is and what it's actually about, and they would find out that it's not what they've been taught, and it would break their mind. In the sense of, imagine you show up and your entire life you've been taught to hate America, and then you get here and you see what's actually going on here, and you recognize that you've been completely lied to. See how that would break a Chinese soldier? I don't think you could actually bring the Chinese to America and invade America. I think that very quickly they would be like, wow, you guys have been lying to me my entire life. Kind of like what happened to me when I visited Amsterdam for the first time. The first time I went to Amsterdam, I was 20, and I had been hearing all of this hype about drugs and the drug culture and how America was going to go down the tubes because of drugs, right? And I went to Amsterdam, this place that was the most open drug place in the world. I couldn't even tell anything was going on. Completely changed the way I viewed the whole thing. Because I was like, here's a society that has totally integrated this and made it work, and you can't even tell. Like, there's not violence, there's not craziness, there's nothing. Like, it just totally worked. And in that same way, they've created this illusion that China is a gigantic threat to America. But in reality, they need that gigantic threat to keep all of us in check, to keep us in line, to keep us mentally afraid of what's going to take place. There's a lot of paper tigers all staring at each other. America is the biggest paper tiger of all because although we have tremendous capabilities, we're fucking broke. We're as broke as we could possibly be. And we're really playing with the game of pretend and how long you can bullshit people on the idea that you're going to pay back the debt or that you can borrow money that you're actually going to pay back. So you have all these paper tigers out here in the world that are bullshitting. America's one of them. We have capabilities, right? But we're just as weak in the background. All right, in my next note here, I have, in the collapse of every civilization was the attempt to distract the masses before and as it took place, with many recognizing the chain of events that would lead up to that only retrospectively. And in 2014, the Maidan protests took place in Ukraine. That sort of kicked off the destabilization of Ukraine and the toppling of the government there. And we now can look backwards on that and know that that was the beginning of it. In the same way, I feel like we don't know yet what the outcome of these ICE protests are, but it feels like they are trying to foment a color revolution and that they're trying to drag this thing on. One of the things that I can't help but think about the left is how fucking gullible they are. Like, they really believe all the news sources that they get. And people would say, well, Matt, don't you believe all the news sources that you read? No, I'm very skeptical of all of that shit. Somewhere in between all the bullshit is the truth. And you have to discern it for yourself. But in the collapse of every society, they've always tried to hide it. The bread and circus, the government assistance, the distraction. They don't want you to watch while it collapses, because if you know it's collapsing, you're probably not going to follow the rules anymore. Yeah. In my next note, it's always the regular man who has to do the fighting on the behalf of the politicians and the elites. They never go to fight for the shit that they want. They always make somebody else do the dirty work for them. It's annoying that you got people that want to fight wars, but they don't want to be the ones out there fighting the war. They just want to tell other people to go do it. They just want to get other people killed doing it. They would never, ever be caught out on a line where the bullets are cracking, whizzing, and zipping. It's backwards. We should make them fucking fight the wars. If it means so much to you guys, maybe you should fight it. Just saying. And then in my closing thought for today's show, why did God, a perfect being, create such an imperfect world full of imperfect people? At first, that didn't make a lot of sense to me. It's like, if God is perfect and he can do anything he wants, it can do anything it wants, why would it make an imperfect world? But then I came to realize you can't learn any lessons in a perfect world. Only an imperfect world can show you the lessons. And then it kind of made sense. If we lived in heaven, we'd learn nothing. But by living in this imperfect world, we learn a lot. Yeah. All right, party animals. Thanks for joining me and stopping by and checking out the show. I very much appreciate you. If you could, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Those things are fantastic. They help the show more than you ever know. To people that do repost my show and things like that, thank you. Thank you from my heart. Right? All right. Have a great day. Stay safe until we meet again on the next one. And I do hope everybody's going to join me for that. This has been a Matt Metler production, copyright 2025.